Okay. We are live. Hey, Imani, it is always good to see you.
Hey, Kiana, it's good to see you too, especially when we're talking about Black government contracting and the great city of New York.
Absolutely, I agree, because it is indeed our city, and this forum gives us a chance to dig into the work of the controller, right? Which we had to learn a ton about in order to be able to really converse with the candidates this evening.
I feel 10 times smarter than I did before I started doing my research. And I challenge anybody to ask me about the controller.
Yes. Well, actually, I'm going to ask you now, like, how did you, so this is a really critical point, right? Because the other night when we were on our rehearsal call, I think you broke everyone's heart when you let us know that it's actually pronounced controller?
Controller, yes.
Controller. How did you even find this out?
Controller. Lots and lots of research and reading and listening to people pronounce the word.
Oh, wow. Okay. So do we know why it is spelled with an M?
No, I'm not really clear about that, but I know that we need to get the name right. We need to get the conversation with these candidates right, and we need to get our choice correct. So that's why I'm so excited for the conversation tonight.
You are absolutely right. Well, let's jump right into it.
Just make sure you pick the right person.
Good point. So we're going to jump right in. Big welcome to the Black Government Contracting Club Controller Candidate Forum. I am your host, or one of your hosts, co-founder of the Black Government Contracting Club and the founder of Leverage Assessments, a city and state certified pre-employment testing firm. We are delighted that you are joining us tonight. We created this event to give NYC Comptroller candidates the opportunity to share their visions for leading the city's post-COVID economy with MWBEs, particularly Black-owned businesses, and share how they will integrate us into the city's recovery and resiliency efforts. Let's begin by introducing Regina Smith, Executive Director of the Harlem Business Alliance, one of our co-sponsors for this evening, an organization renowned for its advocacy of Black businesses. Do we have Regina backstage?
Yes, bring Regina to the stage.
Good evening. Good evening. It's good to see you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are so pleased to be a part of this forum this evening. It's critically important to the welfare of our people. The Harlem Business Alliance is passionate about Black economic empowerment. So this discussion is particularly pertinent, particularly by the group of individuals and members of this organization. I am so proud of the work that you're doing. So as we know, prior to the pandemic, Black businesses were in a state of crisis. And things have only gone downhill since then. It is imperative that we focus on increasing government contracting with Black entrepreneurs, men and women. We've read the stories, the studies, we've read the reports, and basically at this point in time, there can be no excuses. There must be 100% accountability. And this office, the Office of the Controller, working in conjunction with the Mayor's office, can make astounding progress in this area. So despite the fact that we've had so-called progressive leadership in New York State and in New York City, it hasn't been progressive when it comes to Black economic empowerment. So that's why I applaud the work that you're doing. Let's get started.
Yeah, Regina, I want to thank you so much for pioneering this work, of course, because you have paved the way for business owners like us to come along and be able to follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Regina. So we're going to go ahead and acknowledge some of the other sponsors that we have for tonight as well. Some of our other sponsors include Leverage Assessments, TCC Media, Loyalty Alliance, New Genesis Pathfinder, Coach Cam, Spark Colony, Harlem Business Alliance, and Get Out and Stay Out, also known as GOSO. Imani?
Thank you so much. First, let me just say hello to everyone. My name is Imani Dawson. I am your other co-host for the evening, the other co-host. And I am excited to be here as the owner of TCC Media, an MWBE certified communications and marketing firm based in Brooklyn. And I'm excited because we've done a lot of research, we did a lot of talking, and we realized that many people don't know exactly what the controller does. But don't worry, we got you. We did the research so we could share it with you. Here's a little breakdown. As number 3 behind the mayor and the public advocate, the controller is the city's top accountant. The position's major responsibilities include auditing city agencies, reviewing city contracts, acting as fiduciary, which is just kind of a fancy way of saying a person who acts on behalf of other people, to the city's 5 pension funds, and that's $250 billion under management, folks, determining the prevailing wage, reviewing the city budget, and issuing bonds for big city projects. Tonight's format with our controller candidates is going to be one-on-one conversations where, time permitting, each will answer the same questions. And now, BGCC member Diana Benjamin will introduce our first candidate, Senator Kevin Parker.
Diana, are you with us? Yeah.
Am. Thank you. Thank you so much, Imani. Senator Kevin S. Parker is the 5th ranking Democrat in Senate leadership. He is the chairman and longest serving member of the Senate Committee on Energy and Telecommunications. Senator Parker represents the 21st Senate District in Brooklyn. Senator Parker has grown up and spent his entire life in Brooklyn. He attended New York City Public School System, PS 193, Andrus Huddy, IS 240, and Midwood High School. Senator Parker gained experience in the financial arena at UBS Paine-Webber and in project management with the New York State Urban Development Corporation, where he financed minority and women-owned businesses and promoted community redevelopment. Senator Parker has been a professor of both African American studies and political science at several CUNY and SUNY colleges. He has a bachelor's of science in public service from Penn State University and holds a master's degree from the New School for Social Research in public policy and management. He's currently pursuing a doctoral degree in political science with the Graduate Center at CUNY. Please welcome Senator Kevin Parker.
Thank you. I think Senator Kevin Parker may be saving the world and campaigning. So we may need a few minutes to get our senator in who represents the Flatbush Crown Heights area to the stage. But one thing I will say is that he is an elected official with a proven record of service. So I'm delighted for us to hear more about his vision tonight. And Diana, I know that you were especially excited to introduce him as one of his constituents. Tell us a little bit about your experience with the senator.
Sure. Senator Parker is present. You know, oftentimes, you know, we see our elected officials and they come around during the election season, and then you call their offices and they're not present. You know, no one gets back to your emails, go unanswered. Not with Senator Parker. He's not afraid of sharing his personal cell phone number. So that shows you how committed he is. He's actually not just a talker, but he's actually a doer. So I fully, support Senator Parker in this juncture in his career.
and believe that he will do a phenomenal job as the next city controller.
Well, I think, people consider the role and think accountant, and not that he doesn't have a background in financial affairs, but you might think this person needs to be an executive. And I'm excited that he, like some of the other candidates, has experience in government, because at the end of the day, the office of the controller is another government office, and you've got to be able to get in there and really understand how to manage people and how to ultimately make an impact. I mean, the controller has so much sway over our city's finances, whether we're talking about setting the prevailing wage, right, which we know is an issue in New York. Because the cost of living is so high here, whether it's about the, managing those pension funds, which, let me just remind folks, it's $250 million that he or she, whomever the controller is going to oversee. And knowing that someone has had experience in the financial arena is going to impact us is it's really reassuring, because we are at a point in terms of our city's like the post-COVID recovery, where we've got to get it right. We can't afford to play around. We don't have much wiggle room. We need elected officials that are going to hit the ground running from day one. So I know, as I am sort of considering my own scorecard, which is ranked choice voting. And I hope everybody is prepared. We definitely have to get into that a little bit tonight, Kiana, and make sure that people know that they can actually select 5 candidates and order them for all of the city races. But and so I'm thinking very carefully about my choices and who's in my top squad, and I will say that Senator Kevin Parker's experience is impressive, and I am excited to hear from him tonight.
I agree. And it looks like, you spoke about the senator probably having to save the world, and it looks like he might be having to save the world right now. But
it's Brooklyn, you know how we do. Y'all cats got everything together. See, Brooklyn, you might have a fire. There might be a protest outside. There may be a community member that's like, please save me,
So this
might be acting up.
It might be an opportunity for our fireside chat while we, scramble to pull up another candidate. In the meantime, in addition to ranked choice voting, which I think is a really important topic to discuss, I also was just interested and curious about exploring some of the nuances of the office and the control that the controller has over like the creation of new departments or the creation of new policies. We spoke a little bit about the other day on our, in our last meeting about the fact that our current controller like created this whole diversity office and created all of these, the MWBE University and education programs and things that, you might not have thought would even be capable with the office. But in terms of like thinking outside the box and being proactive, you can see that it can be done. So I'm interested to hear from the candidates about some of the ideas that they have about what new ideas they can bring forward that will help, move some initiatives forward, particularly for Black business owners, to address some of the issues that we face.
I love the fact that it's a bully pulpit, right? In addition to all of the roles and responsibilities that we talked about, that the comptroller is responsible for in our city, there's also the ability to advocate, and use the power of the purse and the power of oversight, which the comptroller has, to really push for more diversity. And I will definitely give our current controller his credit. Alleged scandals aside, he has done a good job of highlighting MWBEs and the city with his making the grade sort of report card for different agencies, the report that he puts out, and also highlighting the fact that there are disparities even amongst the MWBE groups. And as Black MWBEs and Black small business owners, we really have to be concerned, and taxpayers, don't forget that part. I hope everybody's paying their taxes, and today is tax day. So maybe Senator Parker is closing that on up. Who knows? But as you know, 22% of the city's population, if we're talking about a fair and equitable distribution of resources and city spending and contracts, and we should be at a 22% level, and we're just not there yet. So I am eager for the next comptroller to pick up where Scott Stringer left off and really use his office to help advocate for prompt payment, and also getting more of us in the door in every single agency.
Absolutely. As a New York City resident and New York City-based business, I certainly pay plenty of taxes. And good Lord, I mean, if they can make up a new one, you know, they surely will. And without the sophisticated, you know, tax specialists of my counterparts, I end up probably paying more than my fair share. So it certainly would be more than equitable to be able to get that back in the form of contracts. It looks like we have Reshma, so let's do a quick pivot.
Excellent. Thank you, Reshma, for joining us. But you know what? Before we hear from Reshma Patel, and actually, I just want to make an announcement. Unfortunately, Senator Parker has had an emergency. He will not be able to join us tonight, which is unfortunate. So we do wish him the best, and wish him also the best of luck in this election. Before we hear from Reshma, though, we definitely want to hear from a BGCC member to introduce her and give us some context about why she is qualified to be our next New York City Comptroller. And you know what? Listen, sometimes the ladies just gotta take it, you know?
You know, it's kind of the women.
Listen, we gotta look out for our girls. We gotta look out for our girls.
All day.
Can we bring Chrisley Julian to the stage, BGCC member Chrisley Julian, to introduce our first candidate, Reshma Patel.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So excited to introduce Reshma.
Yay! And hello to you, Chrisley. Your bun is on complete fleek.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's how Black women show up. We show up, we look good. You don't break a sweat. Next one to the next one, baby.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. So Reshma went to MIT after college. She worked to help support blue-collar communities through urban renewal and public policy. While consulting, Reshma worked with the city's comptroller office daily. During this time, she worked on the creation of the New York City Transitional Finance Authority, a new financing authority which expanded the city's ability to issue bonds for capital projects. She has facilitated over $40 billion of financing for New York City projects. Throughout her career, working on the city's municipal bonds and investments, Reshma focused on solutions which would generate savings and minimize borrowing costs during challenging times. Over the years, Reshma has continued to use her skills to fight for equity. Please welcome Reshma Patel.
And Chrisley, maybe you'll stay with us since you have a.
Sure.
I guess we have time for one last question. Greetings, Reshma.
Got my glasses here. Well, thank you guys. And Chrisley, that was a great introduction. Much longer than the resume I sent you guys. So thank you.
Listen, you already are a favorite in our hearts for the seamless transition and coming up early. So you go, Miss Reshma.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Indians aren't known to show up on time, but I tend to turn up on time.
TV time isn't just in the African descended community. See,
No,
we're
no.
learning all kinds of things tonight.
Yeah, no. I mean, until I was old enough to meet Black people, I always thought it was just Indian Standard Time, and then I learned that lots of different communities do it the same thing.
Yes, it's all the
We need to
continents.
call it Melanin Standard Time.
Yeah, exactly. And also you mentioned, helping a sister out, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all the sisters behind me who got me to run. So I definitely appreciate the sisterhood.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Reshma, thank you so much again for joining us. And you have the option of making a brief opening statement or going directly to the questions.
Sure. So I'll be brief. I'm different than the other candidates. I know Senator Parker was supposed to be here before me, and I haven't held office, right? I don't have that long experience in government, but I've been doing the work behind the scenes, working as a financial advisor to the City Comptroller's office for almost 8 years in the bond financing area particularly, but being involved with them on a day-to-day basis. And in addition to having that financial expertise that I think we need in that role, I've also been a community advocate, and I've worked as a volunteer in many different organizations that have taken me to different parts of the city, and I've seen different lived experiences. And I believe that we need more of that in our city government, and we need more diversity and more thoughts coming from different areas. And so that's why I'm running for comptroller, because I think we need a combination of skill set and community advocacy work in this role.
Okay. Awesome. And tell us why you are the best choice for the controller. What specific experience and proven achievements make you the best candidate for this position?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I think that my experiences of having worked in public finance, worked for almost 20 years in public finance, 8 of which were as financial advisor to the Comptroller's office. And, one of the things I think that people don't remember is in 1975, when New York City was on the verge of bankruptcy, which was, a lot of people compared this time to that. And it was not because people were leaving the city or crime was going up, it was because we weren't able to pay our debt service, right? And debt service is a $7 billion line item in our budget. And it's something that people don't talk about. People don't talk about how all the capital projects get funded, and it's all through bond issuances, and how we need to really keep track of that, because it could lead to a longer term problem for our budget and cut away from social services that we need, from projects that we need funded. So I wanted to bring light to that. And I think I have a unique expertise in that area, as well as having the unique expertise of actually worked directly with the Comptroller's office, which I don't think anybody else in this race has. And then in addition to that, I am vice chair of the Budget Committee on Manhattan Community Board 6, as well as a board co-chair of Chaya Community Development Corporation in Queens, where I've worked with South Asian immigrant communities in Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and the Indo-Caribbean community in Richmond Hill. And kind of going into that whole idea that I've seen how different lives are in our city and how services are different, right? The needs that my community board sees are very different than the needs I see in Richmond Hill and Jackson Heights and Elmhurst, right? And especially last year during the COVID relief, I saw how awful, the inequities existed before, but really this pandemic brought to light the systemic disinvestment in certain neighborhoods. And I think that we don't talk enough of, and this is blanket thing, we were disproportionately impacted, Black and brown communities, but I don't know how many people have actually been there doing that work on the ground the way I've been doing.
Certainly.
Yeah. And and this was specific and proven achievements. Okay, I'm sorry, I have to read this. Proven achievements. I became one of the experts in New York City municipal financings and really going through the budget, going through the debt, understanding it line by line, and someone who was there trying to do the things that the Comptroller's office is supposed to be doing, which is holding the city accountable, making sure that our finances are in line and we're achieving savings. And I have created new financing authorities, which help the city lower their cost of borrowing. And I've also restructured the city's debt at critical times, like right after 9/11, after 08, where we needed, we had budget shortfalls. And the way we fill those budget shortfalls was through getting savings, through restructuring of debt. And then in times of budget surpluses too, because the city is required to have a balanced budget, we had to figure out how we move that money forward and how do we spend it properly, and looking at the debt portfolio and trying to find the right debt to defease so we can use that cash in a future fiscal year for other programs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Imani, are you muted?
I was mute, and there it is, the time of the evening where I started talking. Reshma, thank you so very much for sharing that. I have to say that I'm excited by both your experience, because that indicates that you know exactly what the sort of role of the comptroller is, and also your advocacy, because as Black MWBEs, we're definitely looking for a leader in that position that can continue to fight for equity when it comes to government spending and contracts. So my question for you is, in 2020, the city spent $17.5 million with Black MWBEs, just 1% of its total COVID-19 contract spending, according to the current comptroller's Make the Grade report. What, if any, changes would you recommend to make the procurement process more equitable?
So it is really unfortunate what happened last year in terms of how little was spent in contracts with MWB firms. And one of the problems was that the mayor, right, using emergency powers, did not make the process transparent. And then what I was surprised by is it's only like, I think, August, where the comptroller is like, no, we need to have this information. And the things that I would change is we need to have this information on an ongoing basis. This idea that we do our audits after doesn't really solve our problems, right? Because we need to provide the best public value to our residents in the city. And how do we do that? We should be tracking ahead of time, right? Collecting that data on an ongoing basis in a transparent manner that we know right away, like a month into this, wait, we're not giving enough contracts to Black and brown owned businesses, right? Why are we not doing that? And shift, right? Rather than after all the money has been spent is when we're doing this and then saying, okay, now we need to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of tools that we have now to collect data, right? That people do it all the time in the corporate sector and the nonprofit sector. I've had to audit, nonprofit programs where we go and we collect data through cell phones or online surveys where we're able to track whether or not our services are being adequately provided. And I think the city needs to be doing that. I think moving this whole procurement process either to a centralized database or even using blockchain where it's completely transparent, where there's trust between parties, will really improve the process. Because the other issue is that a lot of these businesses, we're not getting enough contracts for MWB firms, but then they're also not being paid on time. Right? Most of them don't get paid in 30 days. There's sometimes, from the work I've done from the nonprofit side and human service contracts, we've had to wait up to a year to get paid. And, that is hard for nonprofits. And I can imagine for a small business, that would be incredibly hard too. And we need transparency in that timing of when people are getting paid, and also transparency of where all the money is being spent, because sometimes only a few firms are getting this work. And we want to make sure that a lot of firms have access to it.
Certainly. Well, when you start talking about blockchain, you might be a little ahead of the city there. I don't. We working on maybe the third or fourth passport rollout, and we just accepting bids via email. But perhaps there will be a time where we will get into blockchain, and it'll be a wonderful day. We'll be able to use that technology to help us track contracts and spending live in real time. And this segues into a little bit of a conversation about the tax spend that we were talking about a little bit earlier on. Black people are approximately 22% of New York City's population. How will you revamp the contracting process within the Office of the Comptroller so that Black-owned businesses receive 22% of your office's procurement spending?
Yeah, so I think that's an important thing, because even within the contracting, where it's supposed to be 30% MWBE firms, the number going to Black business owners is much smaller, right? And when they do the grading, I think for like Asian Americans it's B, for Hispanics it's I think a C, and then for Black-owned businesses it's actually a D rating, right? When the comptroller has been doing these audits. And so I think that I think overall the number of contracts, the MWBEs, needs to increase, because we are actually a majority of the city, all of us together, right? So there should be more. And I go back to this whole tracking of data, right? And also when we do the audits, agency by agency audits, right? We don't often look at, it just says, oh, it's these MWBE allocations, but we don't say how much needs to go to each community within those. And I think that's really important. Because certain communities get left out, and you can say, oh yeah, we're giving out enough of these contracts, but not really looking at, if the people who we really want to help and to create the kind of equity that we want in the city, it's not happening because it's being only certain communities are benefiting, certain people, it's a really complicated process. It's not, transparent. And as a result, some people can figure out how to game it too, right? And get all the contracts. And I would really want to make sure that we give equal opportunity to everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imani, are you muted again?
I am muted. Okay, muting is the gift and the curse. You don't get to hear my Brooklyn noise, but I maybe start my sentences and I'm 4 or 5 words in before I start talking. Reshma, thank you so much for that. I have another question for you. The New York City Comptroller controls more than $250 billion in pension assets. What will you do to diversify the pension fund managers so that 22% of them are Black, accurately reflecting our population here?
So I think currently, there's about 10% of the managers. Again, it goes back to it's the Emerging Managers Program, which puts everybody together, right? And I think that we need to, one, increase it. And Scott Stringer has said that he wanted to increase it to 12%, which we're getting close to that, I think, this year. But I think it needs to be more, right? Just like with the contracts, because reflective of the population. And again, segment it out and look at, okay, how many of those are Black emerging managers versus how many are women, how many are Asian Americans, how many are Latinx, and really break it out so we know that each community is being served at the level that they should be in terms of getting these opportunities. And I think the other thing, though, with the Emerging Managers Program is also, there's barriers to access in every way, right? Because even on the bond issuance side, right, there's, Black-owned businesses have opportunities to be broker-dealers, right? But often when you don't have the capital, right, you cannot qualify because they have a certain amount of money that they require for this. And I think that we need to look at those barriers to entry, and we need to have training and support, too, to help people get to a point where they can even figure out the process of applying, because oftentimes the whole process is really hard for them to get through because there's these outside consultants, especially on the Emerging Managers Program, that have a database of firms. And if those consultants themselves aren't committed to diversity, then the city will never be able to see the diversity of firms that are out there who can provide these services for them.
Absolutely. Imani, unmute yourself.
First of all, I clicked the mute button. Okay? So let the record show that my computer is acting up. Reshma, you hit on a number of points that we're concerned about as Black business owners. And we think it's important for you to hear directly from some of our members about issues that they are dealing with. So right now, I want to introduce Black Government Contracting Club member Christy Julian, who introduced you. I want to invite her back on stage so she can ask you a question.
Hi, Rashma. How are you?
Good. How are you? And I love the bun.
Oh, you just got 2 points from me, Rashma. Thank you. Thank you.
The bun is the universal fave.
Right. The higher the bun, the closer to Black excellence I am. All right.
Yeah.
So first off, let me just introduce myself formally. My name is Chrisley Julian. I have a human capital fund management firm here in Brooklyn, New York, that specializes on human capital analytics and its impact on business performance. So we improve employees, thus improving business. That's our belief. And so right into our question, I'm concerned about prompt payment. Small businesses have been forced to wait months, crippling our ability to execute. As you know, our community doesn't have the same access to capital that some other groups do. What policy can you introduce to ensure that our businesses get paid within 30 days?
So as I was talking about earlier, I really think that we need to look at having and there's Passport right now, but it is very cumbersome from what I've heard from people who have to use it. I went on and set up an account to try to use it, and I found it really hard to monitor and figure out. And so I think that we need a better centralized database that is transparent and that is accessible to everybody at the same time. Because what happens is The controller's office is able to get the contracts through in 30 days, right? Because that's required, but nobody else is able to do that. And the agencies take a long time, and it varies from agency to agency, right? So one is looking at which agencies are taking longer. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been on that end where I've worked with nonprofits where we couldn't budget because it took us like 3 years for one contract to get paid. And exactly, when you're a small business, you don't have that capital, right? So I think that one, and then the city's asking you to basically float, right, the money they owe you, right? So either we need to get payment ahead of time and have interest on that payment going to the small business to help them, or we need to figure out how we get the agencies to review and accept the contract in a much quicker process. And I think having a centralized database, blockchain might be too forward thinking for the city, but that is a way where you are able to increase efficiency and see things transparently. And it doesn't have to be blockchain. It could be another centralized database that's easier to use than Passport, that is accessible to everybody, where you see where it is. It's like when you're trying to track a bill, it shows where it is along the line, and you can see where that contract is. So you kind of know when you're getting paid. And then working with the agencies to make sure that they have a 30-day time frame too, to really be able to implement everything they need to do to approve the contract, so people aren't waiting for such a long time to get paid.
So do you have, and from my experience, of course, with the federal government, when we talk about net 30, there are some limitations to net 30. There's some limitations to when you might get paid. But what policies, for example, on the federal side, there's the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, but what policies will you implement and integrate to ensure that businesses as a whole are going to be paid within 30 days? I understand the integration of processes so we can see more transparency, which is much appreciated. However, what plans are in place for you as a possible controller to ensure that the payments are set out in 30 days?
I would have to work with all the agencies, because the control's office already is required to approve the contracts in 30 days, right? The holdup is everybody else. And I really need to work with the agencies and have a policy, and it would be a policy, again, control's office can legislate, but have a policy that makes sure that each of the agencies is required to approve a contract within 30 days and make sure we have payment within 30 days. And if there isn't payment, then rather than have the small business float the money, that the city has to float the money for them.
Understood. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to add that I think one of the other things, it is about capital access to, it's about payment, but it's also the businesses having capital. And I think that one of the things that the city should be looking at is, through this economically targeted investments that we have through the pension fund, which is, where the city's capital is, right? To invest in our, Black and brown owned businesses, right? Especially at this time when so many, right? Almost 53% of Black owned businesses had to undergo, half of the revenues were lost last year and had limited access to PPP loans compared to, say, like 37% of white businesses, right? And we saw that inequity. We saw that inability to access banking services because redlining still exists for businesses, even though we don't have it for housing. Yeah. And I think the city really needs to play an active role in fixing that.
Agreed. Thank you. And thank you for acknowledgement specifically of redlining. I truly appreciate that.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Reshma, for answering some of our questions this evening.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
It was a pleasure having her. Thank you, Chris Lee, for asking a question and really holding Reshma's feet to the fire to get a clear response. That's exactly the kind of energy that we need and we appreciate here in the club. And speaking of the Black Government Contracting Club, Kiana, your co-founder and partner in crime, Terrell Brown, is going to come and give us a few words about the mission and vision of Black Government Contracting Club. It's time to get down with the BGCC.
Terrell, are you backstage?
Yeah, I am backstage. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have kids in the background. It's her birthday. Livy, bye. Not right now. Come on, it's a birthday.
Oh, my favorite is parenting while on a critical meeting.
Come on,
okay,
Your 2 seconds of fame. This is Olivia. They can't see you. Let me put your face in the camera.
Hey!
It's her birthday. She's 10.
Hey, hello, future BGCC member.
We got some of the entrepreneurs in training. Yes.
Okay. So back to business. That was our short commercial break. No, but thank you. That's Olivia. She's 10. It's her birthday. And we both are Tauruses. So a lot of energy in this household. And so again, I'm happy that everybody, want to thank all the candidates who were able to make it this evening and be here with us. Want to thank everybody in attendance because without you, we wouldn't be anything. And last but not least, would also like to thank all of our members, my co-founder, Kiana, as well as Imani. And so a little about the BGCC, go to www.blackcontracts.org, become a member. If you are not a member at this moment, the BGCC, we're an organization of Black companies, mainly in the government contracting space, that are working together to really build wealth within our communities. And we've been pulling ourselves by our own bootstraps for a very long time and have continued to do so. So with that, just a few announcements I'd like to make. Also go to the website, go get you some merch. It's hot outside, so you gotta have your swag right. Get you a t-shirt, get you a mug, get you a hoodie. So definitely get those things. And then some other things that we have. Of course, this is our second event with the NYC Comptroller Forum. We also will be doing an event around ranked choice voting and cannabis. So those are 2 other things that we're doing. And last but not least, we'd like just to open it up. Other people, if you're interested in terms of becoming a member or partners out there, corporate partners, government agencies, we are a solution provider to you. So we right now have our accelerator program for next year that we've been working with other stakeholders and government agencies, primarily in New York, but throughout the country, to come up with more of a proactive solution rather than reactive. So we're designing contracts around their needs with companies in conjunction, as opposed to when contracts are awarded, trying to find different joint venture partners. So we're being very proactive, because right now in this time, especially as we see in our country and mainly New York, there are many challenges, but we need new leadership. People need new ideas. People need to be empowered as well as innovative, because business as usual and the same old never has been acceptable. And we need to make that change. So we're changing the status quo, and we're looking for all like-minded individuals to join in that mission.
Thank you so much. I have to say, as a member who is not a founder, that what to me is most inspiring about Black Government Contractors Club is the fact that we are a community. And a lot of times as entrepreneurs, particularly Black entrepreneurs who specialize in bootstrapping, can I get an amen? We are working in silos. We are not benefiting from people who understand our, shared cultural lens, some of the unique challenges that we face as entrepreneurs, and for people who have gone through the trouble of getting certified as an MWBE and then facing the process of actually obtaining those first contracts, it can be very daunting. So knowing that there are these brilliant and giving people around who are willing to share their experience, who are willing to partner with us, who are willing to advocate on behalf of Black MWBEs and really all Black-owned businesses and ultimately everyone in the city. Because we all know that when Black people, when we climb, we are bringing others along too. And when we are fighting for rights, ultimately other communities benefit. That's part of we're all in this together that Reshma talked about. And I love the fact that we are in it together for each other.
We are, and you make a good point, Imani. Being an entrepreneur is certainly a lonely space. Being a minority entrepreneur is a lonely space, and being a Black minority entrepreneur, probably one of the loneliest spaces.
That's like the triple crown of loneliness.
It is indeed. So I think that, we hesitated to bring the group together because you're always, you want to make everything perfect. Maybe we were overanalyzing it, but at the end of the day, once we did start to meet and collaborate and brainstorm about what programs we could put on and how we could approach the world with this group, we started realizing that we should have done this a lot sooner. And that it's really the collective and bringing our collective ideas, right, and strengths and skill sets together that makes way more possible for all of us than anything that either of us could have done on our own.
Well, listen, you guys are definitely making up for lost time because it's almost incredible that we say this, but BGCC is less than a year old. We have quickly figured out that we had to speak truth to power to prospective elected officials, take advantage of the ranked choice voting format, and let people know that they've got to appeal to us and they have to work for us too, and that we're not just going to vote, that there's going to be accountability attached. You see, Terrell had 77 more things he was trying to sign us up for. So we are moving quickly, we are scaling, we started small, but we're acting fast and we are growing so much. We already have hundreds of members. So the future is boundless to me. I know that there are some really cool things coming down the pike, everything from an accelerator to the opportunity for members to partner together and do joint ventures. And I'm just excited for the future, which is not something that I would have necessarily put together pre-BGCC when approaching the government contracting space. Real talk.
Well, we're here, and I think we're thankful to be here, and I think we realize that we're in the right place. I want to ask you guys about your thoughts on ranked choice voting, since you mentioned it a little bit. Somebody asked me the other day if I'm going to, if I'm actually going to use it, which made me realize that some people are just not even going to bother with it.
All 5 of my choices. Okay, this is an opportunity to bring power back to the people and to the ballot box. So much of politics is transactional, which is why I'm excited to talk to the people today who recognize the value of our community and have come out to join us. But we've got to take advantage of the fact that we can make 5 choices, and because in order to win, a candidate has to reach 50%. If you are let's just take this race, for example. We went in on the research. There's a candidate who did not join us tonight who's leading, named Corey Johnson, and he's the current speaker of the city council, but he's only getting 14%. And in order to win this, you don't just need like the highest percentage. You've got to get 50%. So in his campaign strategizing, I hope they're realizing that they have to appeal to a broad base of constituents, and that Black people as 22% of the city's population is a pretty significant group. And he needs to come up, just like all of the candidates tonight, need to come up with a vision. And I personally feel, as someone who was shell-shocked by the 2016 election where Donald Trump became our president, we now have an obligation to pay attention to politics at every level. And anything that gives us an opportunity to have more choice and to select more people that we think could represent us should our first choice candidate not be selected is an important thing. I wish we could bring ranked choice voting to the national level, personally. I think it's only a matter of time. We may be 100 years old when it happens, because this is an electoral system that really is about bringing truth to power, and people want to control our destinies, and this is putting more power, in my opinion, more power in the hands of the people. So I would urge everyone to educate themselves about ranked choice voting. I am excited that Terrell has volunteered us to present to the community about this really important issue. Thanks, Terrell. He's so good at that. But it's critically important. I can't think of a more important way on the local level for us to be involved and engaged than to really sort of educate ourselves about who is voting and why, their platforms, and what they would need for us.
But yeah, and as Imani, like how you said, you know, if the people don't have the power to elect it, you know, they work for us. But oftentimes, reason why a lot of Black businesses or people in general, companies, they're not as successful as they could be is due to a lack of information as well as resources. So us being the leaders in our communities, we will be bringing those resources and information to them so people can become more successful as we are to our members, and ranked choice voting with how important it is. That's why we will be doing that. And if we draft that legislation or policy, Imani, I will sponsor it and bring it to the federal level and promote as aggressively as possible, because it is important. And that's what we need to truly make the changes, which are pivotal in the communities as well as, you know, in our country, you know, because there's, you know, many countries looking at us across the globe and seeing the United States not as the same superpower as we once was. And I think that's part of it. We need to develop all of our human capital throughout all of the communities within this country. So.
Well, I am looking forward to hearing more about you rubbing elbows at the Senate and congressional and presidential level, my brother.
We already have that in the works already. So
first of all, we already know. Okay. Terrell is our relationship guru behind the scenes.
Yes.
I would definitely, that is how I would describe him. But there are so many incredible members of our community. And right now we are going to hear from BGCC member Ashley Gibbs, who's here to introduce our next candidate, Senator Brian Benjamin. Okay, well, listen, as my grandmama used to say, we gonna keep it moving, okay? Because that's what Black people do. I know that Ashley will, I'm sure she will join us later, but I will just sort of introduce Senator Benjamin because he's here and we're excited to begin speaking with him. So let me just say that Senator Benjamin was born in Harlem to an immigrant mother who came to this country with hopes for a better future. He has a degree in public policy from Brown and an MBA from Harvard. Brian served as the chair of his community board before getting elected to represent Harlem and the Upper West Side in the state Senate in 2017. In the Senate, he serves as chair of the Budget and Revenue Committee and has distinguished himself as a leader in criminal justice reform and tenant protections. He sponsored a bill to prevent landlords from drastically increasing rent on rent-stabilized apartments and fought to divest New York's public pensions. He fought to divest New York's public pensions. He has a grand vision for the office, and we are excited to hear from him tonight. Please welcome Senator Brian Benjamin.
Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you. I've been listening. By the way, just so you know, you are also having this forum on the same night that is the last day of our filing deadline. So people are dealing with the fundraising complications. So hopefully that doesn't cause too many problems. But I had to be here because obviously as a former MWB myself, I care very much about this conversation.
Well, thank you so much for being here. That makes it extra special. And we wish you all the best with your filing, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Hopefully, I'm sure that your team is handling that behind the scenes.
I hope so.
Senator, you have the option of making a brief opening statement or going directly to the questions.
I'll make a brief opening statement. You know, I'm Senator Brian Benjamin. By the way, I have a sty on my eye. That's why I have these shades on. I'm not.
Oh,
trying,
okay. We thought
I'm
you
not
were
trying to
just
be
too cool
cute.
to be
It's
cool.
just, no, I wasn't
Okay.
trying to do that. But you don't want to see the sty. But anyway, Senator Brian Benjamin. I was born in Harlem, raised in New York City, Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens. As you mentioned, went off to Brown and Harvard Business School and came back and really have been focusing on sort of making sure a couple things. One, I believe very strongly that businesses, particularly businesses of color, have to grow. We need to have our fair share of the economy. You know, after business school, I spent a few years working out on Wall Street. I was working at Morgan Stanley, where I did investment banking and investment management. And when Obama ran for president, I felt in my spirit, I can't keep doing this. And one of my good friends from business school, he had started a minority-owned affordable housing development business. And I reached out to him and said, you know, hey, I want to come help you. Now, my mom didn't like the idea because for her, safety and security of a paycheck is very different from being an entrepreneur and being a part of the entrepreneurial struggle. But I can tell you, you know, helping to build that business, we grew over the course of 7 years. It was a lot of work. It was very painful. But you learn when you're doing affordable housing, you're dealing with the city and you're trying to get city contracts. And, you know, when you're sitting there with, you know, access to resources, we were fortunate. We had access to resources, but we also had a hard time getting contracts, had a hard time dealing with the old boys club, had a hard time dealing with the RFP process and how RFPs are written and who gets opportunities and who don't. You know, you really see, you know, how this system works and why it works the way it does. So when I became a senator, I really fought hard on two fronts. One is ending mass incarceration as we know it. I do believe we over incarcerate way beyond the need for public safety, like way beyond. And we could talk about that another time. This is not the forum for that.
Oh, another forum, yes.
But secondly, helping grow the amount of opportunities, contracting opportunities for minority-owned businesses. I was very involved in sort of when we re-upped on the MWBE laws just recently, and I've spent a lot of time really focusing on some of the key issues and working with the city, putting pressure out. You know, Maggie Austin and Janelle Doris, and we are regularly consorting. And we just talked about the new agenda for this year. So I feel like it's a very important priority. If we can be incarcerated less and have more business opportunities, our people can really grow. And that is something that's enormously important. So let me stop there. I mean, I could talk about a whole bunch of other things, but
certainly.
let me stop there.
Listen, and we can all relate to your point.
I don't want to mess up the time.
Well, we can all relate to your point too about you know, your parents asking you when you're going to get a job, right? My parents maybe for the first maybe 8 to 10 years of my entrepreneur journey, my parents were still asking me when I was going to get a job, so to speak. Because to your point, salary was, you know, salary and that job security is what they knew. But tell us why you are the best choice for comptroller. And what specific experience and proven achievements make you the best candidate for this position?
You know, I think the comptroller has a couple of roles, right? One is to be the fiduciary of the $250 billion pension funds. And what that means is you are overseeing the Bureau of Asset Management. The entire staff is 700 plus staff members, a $70 million budget, which you really can be very creative in how you structure the office. But that aside, you oversee the Bureau of Asset Management, which is responsible for making investment recommendations and executing on behalf of the 700,000 plus retirees and soon to be retirees. I'm the only candidate running who actually has done that before. At Morgan Stanley, I was part of the investment management group, managing billions of dollars for a range of entities, institutions, individuals, endowments, et cetera. And so when you talk about issues of asset allocation, manager selection, portfolio diversification, I'm steeped in these issues in a way that none of my competitors are. And then secondly, I serve on the board of trustees at Brown University, and the endowment has done extraordinarily well over the last 10 years. And I'm very involved in that process as well. And so I do think it matters that the comptroller does have some sense of that, because it's hard for you to say, I'm going to make sure that black or brown, people of color are going to get their fair share of asset management opportunities when you don't have experience in asset management. How do you know when the consultant, who, by the way, each of the funds hire their own consultants, you can't just make a decision on yourself. You're not a sole trustee. You have to convince the trustees, who, by the way, are teachers, firefighters, police, different municipal employees. So they're not well steeped in asset management finance issues. They got a consultant who they've hired who is conservative, and all they want to do is make sure that they keep getting paid. So that person is always recommending to them safe, tried and true. Because if tried and true doesn't work, no one loses their job. If you go out on a limb and pick that new minority firm, that new black firm, and they don't work out, all of a sudden the world ends. So for me, I do think if you really want to make any real changes as it relates to how we deal with this issue with internally the $250 billion, by the way, the amount of fees and wealth that is being created off of this $250 billion pension fund, that is steep. That is based on that is the money of people of color. So people of color's money is being used to make others wealthy. So for me, that's a ridiculous situation. And then on top of that, we have not 1 cent invested in Africa, not 1 cent invested in the Caribbean, very little money invested in communities of color in New York. So where's the money going? That to me is a economic justice issue. And unless we sort of deal with this in that context, we are going to be caught up in a situation where we're gonna elect a new comptroller. That person is not going to be steeped into this, and they're going to be spending their time focusing on other things. By the way, great things, very important, but this is a big one. The contracting in the city of New York, the lack of $100 billion budget, the billions of dollars that are going on in procurement, the lack of opportunities for people of color. The RFPs are written in a way to keep the same people getting the same business. If you wrote the RFPs with the population of MWBEs in mind, that will force the process to work. But when you write the RFPs in a way that excludes the majority of the MWBEs, you're able to say, well, we tried, we reached out, but there aren't any. Well, there aren't any under the terms you wrote, which you purposefully wrote to make sure there weren't any, right? And so, again, I don't know how you're going to say, oh, well, I'm going to go and make sure that we go from 5% to 20% or 30%. How are you going to do that when you have no experience? Like I have the pain of understanding what it's like to get passed over time and time again. I used to read the RFPs and try to craft the responses. And by the way, when you see the RFPs, you go, oh, crap, we can't do this on our own. So then you go and you try to get a majority firm who, by the way, they read the RFP also. They know, oh, wow, they can't do this without me. So they
probably wrote the RFP.
Okay. Hello, somebody.
Yeah. We're kind of like.
So now what do those terms look like? How can you negotiate to compete for the RFP when you can't do it on your own? So that all has to get restructured. I think the chief diversity officer has to be someone who actually is a person who has dealt with the problems in the system, because how are you going to know what we need to diversify, right? So I just think it's, I get it. Listen, I'm a newer elected, so I'm kind of a hybrid. But it just seems to me we have to be very like practically plain Jane about some of this stuff. It's just not that complicated. And if this is a priority, we need people who understand the issue and we'll deal with it accordingly. So,
Senator Benjamin, you are speaking our language for sure. So many of the things that you just brought up, we want to delve a little further in, and we're going to get to in our questions.
Yeah.
Right now, I want to jump into another question for you. In 2020, the city spent $17.5 million with Black MWBEs, just 1% of the total COVID-19 contract spending, according to the current comptroller's Make the Grade report. What, if any, changes would you recommend to make the procurement process more equitable?
Well, I believe, when you have the emergency procurement procedures, you have to sort of embed in them a mandatory MWBE component, because when you have emergency protocols, then you just everything you can deal with around it is after the fact. I believe everything we have to look at must be on the preventive side, right? So to me, that's an important priority. I think that the mayor and the agencies responsible need to present to the comptroller's office sort of who are they intending to utilize. I mean, this is within the confines of the mayor's power. So I want to be responsible, around how I comment on that. But that to me is a first step. And then secondly, the comptroller should put out to the general public the facts. The part of the problem with what happens here is these things happen, but it's not shared in an easy, digestible way to the general public that can then be utilized for action. So, for example, if we put out a report showcasing what happened, then we can then have the next process of how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? We need to put together a task force to make sure this does not happen again. And then there's certain protocols that you put in place to make sure that you don't get into that position. That to me is part of what can happen. And I think there's nuances in terms of the powers that the mayor has versus the comptroller has. When it comes to registering contract, which is within the comptroller's authority, in normal situations, not in emergency protocol situations, I can say I'm not going to register a contract, but the mayor can ultimately get the contract moving forward, even against my objection, because it's ultimately in their power. I can slow it down. I can use my bully pulpit to create a scene, which I will happily do, because one of the things that we have run into now is we now have great rhetoric, great language around how progressive everybody is, but then when you look at what's actually happening in the weeds, it's not progressive at all. Matter of fact, it's very Giuliani Bloomberg-esque. And I used to be chair of my local community board here in Central Harlem, and I can say to you, the difference in procedures from Bloomberg to De Blasio was not that vast, right? The rhetoric changed, the words changed, the outreach in certain ways changed, but literally in terms of who's getting business, who's not getting business, not much has changed. And so for me, I think we have to, as a former Black entrepreneur who now is very involved in trying to make sure that our businesses get opportunities, like I was fighting very hard on the marijuana bill, which that could be a 2-hour conversation on that. Everyone wants to focus every second on expungement, and I said, listen, I am all about expungement. I'm there on expungement, but I'm not supporting this bill unless I know how are we going to make sure that people of color are getting an opportunity to grow marijuana. I want to know the cultivation. I want to know the distribution. Where's the business of this? Because how we did medical marijuana was criminal. 9 out of those 10 licenses went to white men. It's absurd. So as far as I'm concerned, the comptroller's office is a place where you can be, it's a chief accountability officer for a range of things, but commerce, who's getting paid and who's not getting paid, that has to be a big part of it. And everyone wants to talk about Black Lives Matter until you start talking about the economics. Then all of a sudden, everyone gets queasy, right? It's more comfortable to talk about, oh, we got to make sure we're not arresting people. I want people not get arrested as well. But what about the economics? Let's anyway, go ahead.
Yes, no, to your point, let's talk about the economics. Black people are approximately 22% of New York City's population. How will you revamp the contracting process within the Office of the Comptroller so that Black-owned businesses receive 22% of your office's procurement spending?
Yeah, so what I will do is basically go through all of our spending and look at what we need and what we get, and then I will line that up with the mayor's office of small business services, line it up with all the MWB firms that are contracted, and then we will literally have buckets and targets within the different sort of items to spend to make sure we hit the numbers. I think when I was doing affordable housing development, Matt Wambua, when he was commissioner of HPD, we came up with an idea because it was so hard for Black firms to get projects. We said, well, why don't we just have a couple of projects where the only firms who can apply are Black? And then people go, oh, I guess we can't do that because we need a disparity study. Okay, let's do the disparity study. So actually, it was a group of us who worked with then commissioner. It took us a year and a half. Everything takes time. But then we were able to have that RFP, 6 different sizable lots in New York City, where the main partners, the main people who got those projects had to be minority-owned firms. And that, as you know, when you get an opportunity as a minority-owned firm to do a real project, that now becomes part of your experience that you can use for other projects. My main concern is that there are a lot of talented Black firms that are being stifled because the system won't let us in. And some people want to talk about, oh, well, you just want Black, it's just, you're trying to get people who are in qualified opportunities. And that's not the conversation at all. It's about having an open door policy. So back to your question, which I think you just really map it out. So where's all the spend? Where are the MWBEs, the Black firms in this case in particular? Where are they within those different spaces? And then you just do it.
Thank you. I am not muted. Don't make me come for you, Kiana. I am not muted right now.
I don't want to get involved in that. I'm staying right over here. I'm staying right over here.
It is all love. What can I say?
I'm just answering questions, Imani. That's all I'm doing.
Occasionally misunderstood. No, but I am actually here and not on mute. So I'm risking the Brooklyn noise. But I do have a question for you. The New York City Comptroller controls more than $2 billion in pension assets. You already talked about this. So we want to delve a little bit more into it. What'd you say?
You said 2. It's 250 billion.
Oh no, I said 250 billion.
Oh, okay.
Yes, no, with a B, brother. Listen, I got them dollars.
Okay,
right?
I apologize. I heard 2. I apologize. My fault.
No worries. So you talked a little bit about that earlier. We want to know more about your plans to diversify the pension fund managers and break up those tried and true folks that the trustees are advocating for, because we want to see 22% of the pension fund managers Black, at least, to reflect our population in the city.
Yeah, so the first comment on that is anyone who tells you that they can go from less than 5% to 22%, or it's about 2% now, are actually not telling you the truth. In the city, the trustees, the 5 trustee boards, you have to convince them of decisions, right? So what I will say to you, the real piece is, how is my office going to work to provide these 5 funds. The police and fire, by the way, I've spent time with all these funds. They are like, they someplace else. They're like, we don't care about any social policies. Y'all keep that to yourselves. We just want highest returns all the time, period. Right? So with those two funds, I believe there are amazing funds run by people of color that meets what they want. So I will present that to them. The teachers, the BERS and NYCers, they have a little, they think about us, the world a little differently. And I will make sure I provide to them those opportunities. It'll take time. It will not be something you can snap your fingers, because we would have to get there. But I would make sure that the investments that I'm recommending, the top flight investments that I'm recommending, are coming from our people. And then it's incumbent upon me now to go convince them with the consultants hitting in their ear to make the decisions to move forward. We will move in that direction. We will get there, but I can't snap my fingers and do it. But what I have to do is be able to sell to nervous people, okay, that this is the step forward. If you look at, for example, in 2018, many people don't know this. In 2018, the Jamaican Stock Exchange was the #1 performing stock exchange in the world, on the planet Earth. #1 performing. There's a mindset that where people think Black, they think lesser than, and part of and those of us who are in our space, we know better. But you have to understand, when I talk to some of these teachers, all they want to make sure is that their pension funds are secure. They just want to make sure that when they retire, that they're going to get their money, and they want to make sure that the people who elected them keep electing them, and feel confident in what they're doing. So, they're not trying to be heroes here, right? So I have to present these investment options to them in a way that fits what they are focused on. Because if I come at it about what I'm focused on, they're going to be like, well, we ain't focused on that, okay, right? And so that's part of the delicate piece of this, which is why I come back to where I started. Why someone who actually understands how the investments works, knows investments in it, and can speak about this very fluently and convincingly, and is as into the meat and potatoes of it, is so important if we want to get this accomplished. Because if you don't know what is being talked about, and you just have a social agenda, the consultant will run circles around you, and then nothing will change.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You've spoken really passionately, and you've given us some honesty. If 22% is not a realistic number, what's the target you should?
Oh, no. That's my target. I apologize. It's my target. I'm just saying I can't tell you that I can make that happen, because I have to deal with the context of who's there. But no, I believe that our percentage of the funds and of the contract should represent our percentage in society, without question. So,
no, absolutely.
Just so you're clear, I'm sorry if I said that wrong. Matter of fact, I believe, and there's analysis that shows this, that newer, younger firms of color that are actually outperforming general firms. It's just psychology, right? So that is something. No, so I'm there altogether. So ultimately, to your question, I do believe by the time I'm finished my first term, if I'm not north of 10%, I believe that's a failure.
Thank you so much for that. And you know what? We have Kiana and I, as members, have had the opportunity to ask you some really good questions and get some insightful answers from you. And now we want to give another one of our members an opportunity to ask you a question as well. I'd like to introduce Ashley Gibbs, who will come and tell you a little bit about her business and ask you a question. Ashley, can you join us?
Okay.
Ashley might have changed her mind.
Sorry, I probably did I say
Or
something?
maybe-
Ashley, did no. It's my fault.
Maybe you answered her question already.
My bad. Sorry.
And there was nothing left to say. But so we can ask it.
Sure.
We're all concerned about prompt payments.
Oh,
Small
wow.
businesses have been forced to wait months, crippling our ability to execute. As you know, our community doesn't have the same access to capital that some other groups do.
Yeah.
What policy can you introduce to ensure that our businesses get paid within 30 days?
So here's the problem. The problem is that the mayor's office drags their feet on these contracts. So the city agencies award them, and it has to go through 2 layers of the mayor's office before it gets to the comptroller. The comptroller has 30 days as a requirement. By the time it gets to the comptroller's office, it could be outstanding for 6 months, 9 months, a year. It's just a bad situation. So my view is the first order of business is requiring the city of New York, which the comptroller can't compel. But I think, if we go about electing the right mayor, we'll get there. Compelling the city of New York, the mayor's office, OMB in particular, to have a timetable. Now, OMB will say to you, 30 days is too fast because we have to vet them. We have to do this. They're worried about if they have all these protocols and procedures to make sure that whoever actually gets awarded a contract we don't turn around and find out, oh, wait a minute, this firm is doing shady stuff over here, this and that. So they have a vetting process that takes time. They have all these security clearances and checks and all that. The first thing I would do is, I believe that we should do whatever it is, it should happen concurrently. The mayor's review and the comptroller's review should happen at the same time. There's no reason why it has to go sequentially. It can just happen concurrently. And then secondly, I believe that I've spoken with the mayor's office. They believe 120 days is too long. I think somewhere between 60 to 90 days is the timetable that we need to just settle on, and people will know that they will. Because then once, at least if people know what the timetable is, then they can plan and map their lives accordingly. But the mayor's office is the problem with that, because they take an extremely long time, and there's no timetable on them. There's no clock on them. They can take as long as they need before they provide the contract to the comptroller's office. So the policy that I would introduce, I'm sorry, I go back to that, would be, trying to force the mayor's office into agreeing that we have a set time where between the both of us, we will get this done in a timely fashion. I think 30 days is going to be hard with the mayor's office, but I'm definitely there for 30 days.
Well, listen, as long as it doesn't take a year, because we have definitely heard some horror stories.
And
Thank you so much.
Can afford it.
Yeah.
Not this Black MWBE business owner. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you for your candor tonight. You really went in. We wish you the very best of luck with your campaign. And we want to give you an opportunity just to say some closing remarks.
I believe very strongly that our small businesses, our Black businesses, are the key to our community. If we don't invest in them, and most of the times it's our small Black businesses that I turn to as a senator to help with our community service projects, right? They're the ones tied into the churches. They're the ones, sort of in the community, making sure that we function. And the better that our small Black businesses do, the more people who are scared, who want to jump in, but are scared, the more they'll feel comfortable leaving corporate America or wherever they are to really sort of, to step in. I was fortunate enough that a good friend of mine had built up his small business enough where I can come join him. Now, when I joined him, we were like, I was like, look, this is painful, right? but it's like, wait, hold on. I'm used to certain accoutrements. This is kind of complicated, right? Like, where's our assistant? Where's the coffee? But
who's making the coffee?
Get the paper, right? I mean, but those are the things. I was like, wait a minute, I went to Harvard Business School. I'm getting the paper, like, but that is what. But now that firm has grown, and there's a number of now there's about 70 employees, right? So people are feeding their families because of the work that a few people took to get this thing going. And these are Black people feeding their families. And by the way, when we were doing projects, Black architects, Black engineers, Black lawyers, Black finance people, and those people used that experience to help grow their businesses. And then it's a chain effect. So this is just way too important for our community. And as one of the few electeds who come from a small business background and a minority-owned business background in particular, I understand how hard it is. And as comptroller, I would do everything in my power to work with you to have a better paradigm for our people.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that inspirational story. I'm sure we all, but actually, you know what? We have a diverse group of members. So I'm sure some people have more than 70 employees. But for those who have given us some inspiration and a dare to dream. Thank you so much.
I'll get in trouble, Imani. I am no longer a part of the business. I am a senator separately.
Listen, you are given
the firm. That's where the firm is. Yes.
A chance to shine, and that's what we all want and need. So thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the very best of luck on the campaign.
Thank you.
And have a great night, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Awesome.
What a night.
We've heard some pretty incredible responses. I mean, and I can see folks on the YouTube chat. We've got Gary Johnson, who is agreeing that that some of the responses from the candidates were spot on. And I think that we'll have a moment at some time in the forum to have some discussion about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like my motto for the night is y'all gonna learn today. If you do not know what a comptroller did, and more importantly, what a comptroller can do for you and your business,
yes,
you will certainly understand before we are through. I believe we have another candidate, but before we get into the to the next sort of conversation, I think it is important that we take some time and just unpack what we've heard tonight and the highlights that people are talking about, because this is how we learn. This is how we grow as people and as entrepreneurs. Although, guess what?
What?
Our next candidate is here right now.
Our next candidate is here right now. So it gives us the option. Do we want to? Because if we pause
good. This is really a great. Oh, and he's a gentleman. Okay. Did you see that? You put a little note in the corner like, oh, y'all want to talk for a little while? Thank you.
But if we speak to him first, it gives us an opportunity to review all of the responses.
I think it would be so amazing to have a little post wrap up.
Yes.
What we've heard tonight. I wish I had more sports analogies, but that's what Coach Cam's for.
Yes.
That's right. So he's going to have some after the game analysis. But right now, we need to make sure that we introduce our Councilman Brad Lander. So we have a BGCC member who is going to do the honors. I'm looking for the real McCoy. Where is BGCC member Charlie McCoy? Can you please bring him on stage?
I know Charlie's not going to stand us up tonight. Hello. Good evening, Charlie.
Not the real McCoy, Kiana.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Charlie McCoy. I own two concept retail stores in Manhattan, and a creative agency, soon to be MBE certified. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to introduce Mr. Brad Lander. Now, Brad is a member of the City Council from Brooklyn. As co-founder of the council's Progressive Caucus, Brad helped bring participatory budgeting to New York City and has a track record of partnering with community advocates to win data-driven, innovative campaigns. He protects New Yorkers, he expands tenant rights, holds the NYPD accountable, and wins safer streets. Prior to serving in the city council, Brad was a community planner and housing advocate. He spent 15 years in the nonprofit sector as the director of two organizations, the Pratt Center for Community Development and the Fifth Avenue Committee. He lives in Park Slope with his wife, Meg Barnett, president and CEO of Nonprofit New York, and their children, Merrick and Rosa. Now, Brad is running for New York City Comptroller to help our city rise to the challenges we're facing. The Comptroller has a critical role to play in helping to rebuild a more equitable economy and prepare our city to confront the challenges of the future. The office has the tools and the responsibility to ensure we are holding the government accountable to its promises, to public sector retirees, and to future generations of New Yorkers. As Comptroller, Brad will put those tools to work to help New York City recover from one of the most daunting crises and build a better, fairer, and more resilient city. Please welcome Brad Lander.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, Charlie. That was an excellent introduction. I've never been introduced by the real McCoy before.
Big welcome, council member. Thank you for joining us. You have the option of making a brief opening statement or going directly to the questions.
Wow. I mean, I'm happy to go directly to the questions. That seems kind of fun. Now we make the opening statements over and over and over again. So let's go straight to the questions.
All right, I hear that. Well, tell us why you are the best choice for comptroller. What specific experience and proven achievements make you the best candidate for the position?
Super. First of all, let me just say a big thank you. Like, it's an honor to be here tonight, and I appreciate that you guys are doing like a lot of education. There's not a lot of folks who are focused on the comptroller's race, and to have you do this work together and let people know about it and talk about why it matters. I just really appreciate it. It's really great. So my name is Brad Lander. I'm running for New York City Comptroller to secure a bold economic recovery from the COVID crisis, to make investments in our communities that create jobs and support small businesses and MWBEs and affordable housing, help our neighborhoods to thrive, to confront the economic and racial inequality we have seen so painfully in this crisis, and especially to help our city be more prepared for future crises than we were for this one. I'm proud to be supported in this race by Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, Congress members Jamal Bowman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Nydia Velasquez, Senator Elizabeth Warren, some great organizations like Working Families Party and Make the Road. Before I entered politics, I spent 15 years running two great nonprofit organizations, helped them grow and prosper, create affordable housing, create jobs, support small businesses, the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center, both in Brooklyn at the Fifth Avenue Committee and then across all 5 boroughs at the Pratt Center for Community Development. Then for the past 10 years in the City Council, I've passed legislation that help fast food workers win a $15 minimum wage and stable schedules, protect freelancers from wage theft, guarantee a living wage for Uber and Lyft drivers, bring participatory budgeting to New York City, protect tenants. Together with Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, I co-sponsored the Community Safety Act to combat stop and frisk and discriminatory policing. And last year I voted no on the city's budget because it did not do enough to cut the NYPD budget and put that money in communities where we need it. I also helped lead the effort in Community School District 15 in my own district to adopt a bold integration plan for our middle schools. And in all that work, I've tried to work with community leaders on the ground and then get the data and then roll up my sleeves to make government work better. And that's the experience I'll bring to the Comptroller's office as fiduciary for the pension fund, as chief fiscal officer, as chief accountability officer. And I guess I do just want to say this, I appreciate representation. So, there are 2 Black candidates in this race, and I really respect people who say, that's the representation I want to see in office. What I will tell you is I have focused, doggedly on equity in my time in the city council, in policing, in housing, in employment, in MWBEs. It is shameful to live in a city that is as diverse as this one, but fails so badly to live up to our values of equity. I've fought like that in the council, and I'll fight doggedly in the controller's office to do it.
Imani, are you muted?
Well, Councilmember Lander, we are so excited to hear you say that, because as you can imagine, it's a group that was designed to support Black MWBEs. We definitely have some questions around equity when it comes to government contracting, and I'd like to start right in on one. In 2020, the city spent $17.5 million with Black MWBEs, just 1% of its total COVID-19 contract spending, according to the current Comptroller's Make the Grade report. And we know just from our own research that the total MWBE spend was abysmal as well, just clocking in at 11%. What, if any, changes would you recommend to make the procurement process more equitable? We know this was an emergency situation.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give you some numbers that I have that, I was appalled as I started digging in on this because, we don't even count these numbers out of the right denominator. The city's total contracting budget in FY 2020, this was before the pandemic, the contracting budget was $22.5 billion. But for some reason, we only look at a fraction of that budget for what we say is subject to MWBE participation goals. So only 3.6 billion out of the 22.5 billion is even subject to the MWBE participation goals, so about 15%. And then of that 3.6 billion that's subject to those goals, still 80% goes to businesses owned by white men or not certified as MWBEs. And then if you start digging in, it's white women who are at, about 9%, and then Asian men, and then Latino men, all important categories. But, by the time you get down to Black men, it's 0.78%. And by the time you get down to Black women, it's 0.42% of the 3.6 billion, which is still only 15% of the 22.5 billion. Like, we need to be ashamed of those numbers. This is a city full of brilliant people of color with creativity. And if we want an inclusive multiracial democracy, we must do better. So there's a lot to do there. Some things we're going to need to get changed in Albany because lowest responsible bidding contracting is part of what diminishes those numbers. And if we could use forms of procurement that allowed us to support MWBE contracting across a broader array of contracting, that would be a big deal. I've supported all the legislation in my time in office that's expanded at the city level, but we need expansions at the state level as well. And then there's just a whole range of things. Some of it's about putting capital up front, so folks have more capital to be able to bid on those contracts. Some of it's accountability over every single agency, including the controller's office. Let's not forget the controller, bids for bond underwriting and public finance, obviously for pension fund management. And if the controller is going to demand more of other agencies, then we've got to lead the way. So it's just at every step of the way, passing the legislation to expand the places where the contracting takes place, putting the resources out through working capital, through both the pension funds and existing and expanding MWBE support programs, making sure the controller's office itself is leading the way, making sure contractors get paid on time, expanding support and mentorship programs, and then just riding herd and holding everybody accountable to these goals.
Listen, Brad, these are, thank you for your thorough responses. I done lost my place in the script.
Came with receipts. We like receipts almost as much as checks.
I was also surprised to learn about, to make to your point about the denominator. I was also surprised to learn how much of our contracting is not actually subject to the MWBE goals and how they determine, what gets assigned a goal and what doesn't get assigned a goal, but there's a big pot of money out there that is not even really under consideration for the program. And that is really surprising. It's astonishing considering that Black people are approximately 22% of New York City's population, right? How will you revamp the contracting process within the Office of the Comptroller so that Black-owned businesses receive 22% of your office's procurement spending? Brett, are you there?
Can you hear me okay? I seem to be having some Wi-Fi problems. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. And I'm glad it's not me having the Wi-Fi problems.
All right. Can you hear me okay now? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you.
How's this? All right.
You sound great.
Okay, sorry now.
Very clear.
Now my lighting is not good, but at least I can hear you. All right, so I want to come in, and I laid this out in the biggest area of procurement in the controller's office is in the pension funds. We procure for consultants, for asset managers. Obviously, those are really important jobs, and they really help people build a business. There's other areas as well, public finance and bond underwriting, and then obviously the controller procures a range of things you need for the office supplies, etc. But the biggest area is that asset management and pension funds. So what I want to do as soon as I get there is start a strategic planning process for responsible fiduciary investing. And that's got to start with an audit of how those funds have been doing. And racial equity needs to be at the center of it. And that's in a whole range of areas. That's what are the funds we're invested in and how are they making their investments? But that also needs to be in the Bureau of Asset Management itself. Let's look at who the senior staff are and the staff that have the work, and in consultants and auditing. So you start from that audit and really identify the shortcomings and make clear as we move to do economic, social, environmental, social, and governance goals, responsible investing goals, that racial equity is centered and that we understand that racial equity in investing means both in where the money is invested and in who's doing the investing. So those things go together. There's not a difference between your ESG or your responsible investing strategy and your MWBE strategy for the Comptroller's office. They're one and the same. I put a responsible investment advisory group together that includes Carlos Naudon from Ponce de Leon Federal Bank and a woman named Angela Matheny, who sources diverse asset managers for philanthropy, and a great set of people to help make this process happen.
Okay, first of all, let me just say that you were doing so good at this that you literally answered the question that I had coming in. So you came in here to slay this, and we appreciate preparation.
Wi-Fi issues
I'm just gonna have to turn to my bonus question.
All right.
You clearly have given a lot of thought to using your role as comptroller for advocacy and promoting equity, which we appreciate. And so I'm going to ask you a question that's a little broader, but also important. According to the Federal Reserve's 2019 survey of consumer finances, the median Black household was worth only $24,100. So as comptroller, how are you going to use your position to close the racial wealth gap and other income inequities in the city?
Whew, all right. The bonus question is like,
that's right. We had to hit you with the extra credit
in America. No, and I mean, this is really important. I mean, let's get real. We're living in a country that, for 400 years has exploited, Black labor and wealth and bodies. And those numbers just, they are at the heart of the soul searching we have to do and the reckoning we have to do and the change we have to make as a country. So everybody's got to focus on it. And the controller's got a really important role. If you're the chief fiscal officer and chief accountability officer in a city that's 70%, Black and brown New Yorkers, and still the wealth is in the hands of white folks like me and my neighbors, like something's wrong and we have to work really seriously on it. So a couple of thoughts in particular on the racial wealth gap. In New York City, obviously a lot of the wealth is held in real estate. And we have now built a city where homeownership is really very inaccessible to working people and to most Black and brown New Yorkers. And, it used to be that we had some homeownership programs that were designed at least to create opportunities for families, like the Mitchell-Lama program was a pathway to homeownership. But now, instead of giving our subsidy dollars for affordable housing for something like Mitchell-Lama, 80% of it goes to a small handful of for-profit private developers to build rental housing. And often it doesn't go to the folks who need it most, doesn't necessarily help folks who are homeless, doesn't stay affordable permanently, but almost nothing is going into subsidizing affordable homeownership for working and middle-class families. So I've laid out a whole plan on my website called Housing as a Public Good that would pull back this $1.7 billion 421A tax break, stop giving the overwhelming chunk of our subsidy to for-profit private rental developers, and create a new shared equity homeownership program that would be a pathway to affordable cooperative and shared equity homeownership for tens and hopefully over time hundreds of thousands of working class New Yorkers, largely overwhelmingly New Yorkers of color. So that's one place where the controller can help change policies. And then, so let me, that's I think the biggest area where I've sort of put out a policy and given some thought. The other thing I'll say is I've learned a lot in getting ready for this job from an amazing woman named Dorsey Applers. She's the Albany city auditor, the first Black woman to be the city auditor of Albany. And, the controller of New York City has, in addition to the pension fund management and the chief fiscal officer job, the sort of job that the Albany city auditor has of auditing city agencies. And so she has set up an equity auditing team. And I want to model that. We're actually doing a panel with her, with Heather McGee, who wrote The Sum of Us, and with Jumani Williams next week to talk about, what we're calling accounting for racial justice, and really using that equity audits model to just look at all the elements of our city, in the economy, in our child welfare system, in our school system. We've talked already about housing. We've talked about investing. Those are unfortunately all places where when you dig in, you see all these inequities, but you can start to make real plans to fix them and really address them. And the racial wealth gap is high up that list.
Well, I am definitely interested. I'm going to have to follow up on that. Let me just tell you, you are working hard for a spot on my ranked choice voting roster, sir.
All right. Did you guys do a training on ranked choice voting before you did the one on the comptroller?
That's funny. We are planning to do it. We are getting close to June 22nd, which is that's like our big day here, because a city like New York, the races we all know the races are determined in the primary. So we've been talking about it throughout the course of tonight. And we also are going to come back to our members in the general community and provide more information and resources around ranked choice voting so people can really take advantage of it. So thank you so much for your honest and thoughtful responses. And now I want to give another BGCC member, as a matter of fact, the real McCoy, an opportunity to ask you a question that he has about his business. So Charlie, can you join us back here again and ask your question to Councilmember Lander?
Certainly. Hey, Brad, I got a quick one for you. So I have a creative agency that I run, and we are close to being MBE certified. And I know that at times the city normally takes 60, 90, even 120 days to pay for services rendered. And I'm wondering if it's even possible to get that number down to 30 days, and if you would have any policies that would help with that.
Yeah, this is a great question. And this is an area where, New York City government, which is going to, our budget's going to be $98 billion next year, nonetheless uses our small businesses, including MWBEs, and our nonprofits like a bank that doesn't charge any interest, rather than take the money we've got and pay it out, or do what a normal person has to does. If you want to borrow money at a bank, you have to pay them interest. we've just decided that we are going to pass that problem along to our vendors, to folks like you. And again, this is small businesses, MWBEs, and nonprofits who have to wait, in some way, some cases you're lucky to get it in 120 days. I know nonprofits that have been waiting a year. That is just so totally unacceptable. You can't do the city's cash management on the backs of small businesses and nonprofits and MWBEs. So I did support a law recently. I'm spacing the number. I think it's Intro 1295, but I don't quote me on the number. Helen Rosenthal is the lead sponsor, to really provide a lot more transparency about where contracts are slowed down. And the city recently adopted a new system called Passport for tracking its contracting and payment, but the controller's office is not yet on that system. So I want to get the controller's office in the Passport system. I want to get that law passed so we can really track every contract through and make sure they get paid in a timely way. Some of this is bureaucratic inefficiency. Some of this is that the controller's office actually has to start reviewing the contracts even as they're going through the system and not wait till that's done to sign off on them. But some of it is a strategy, I believe, by the Office of Management and Budget, just like everybody kind of thinks, well, if I can make my vendors, wait, then I can sort of, avoid having to borrow. And that's just, that's not acceptable for the city of New York to do. And the first place, this goes back to what we're saying about what a small percentage of contracting the MWBEs are. If they're only going to be such a tiny percent of the contracting, the very least we could do is make sure we paid them on time. So that would be step one, would be to say, let's prioritize our MWBEs for timely payment, because we want to make sure, we know they can't bid on the next contract if we've stiffed them for this one.
Yes.
Well said. Well said.
I agree. And Brad, do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
This has been really fun. I've enjoyed talking to you. And I think this is the kind of thing that I guess what I'll pledge is to come back and keep talking to you, because I feel like this gets a spotlight. You look at those numbers we talked about MWBEs, and you get pissed off and you could say, how can it be that bad? And then it's 4 years later, and the next controller candidates are coming around. So we have to stay on top of this together. I will pledge to come back and meet with you guys as often as you like. So that, one of the ways of thinking about this job is it's the city's chief accountability officer, but accountability is a shared task and we have to be accountable to each other. So I'm glad to keep coming back. I'm not going to forget this. This is something I want to be front and center. And look, I guess I'll just say this. I sort of said this in my opening, but I'll say it again here. Look, especially if you're running as a white man, on a platform of equity, and there are, Black candidates in the race, there's women in the race. I respect people who choose to vote for and support them. But I want to live in a more just and equal city. I don't like the city or the ways that our government operates. And I'm going to feel an extra responsibility to be accountable to you and to work hard every day in the office of Comptroller to make these changes.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. And let me just leave you with this. Representation matters for sure, but at this point in the post-pandemic saga, we're looking for real results. So we appreciate the fact that you are willing to work hard for us and our communities. And we thank you for being such a great sport, coming out, powering through your Wi-Fi issues. And
sorry about that, but thank you for being patient with me.
Oh, listen, we get it. We've been in this world for 1.5 years, and you have been a real trooper. So thank you so much, sir. We wish you the absolute
wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much.
All righty. Bye-bye. So it has been an evening, and you know what? After all of that talk and analysis and facts and drama and emergencies, I think that we need to have a little bit of post-game analysis from our favorite coach, who is a BGCC member, and he keeps us all on our toes. Coach Cam, can you join us? I know some other people have some things to say about tonight. Still just taking it all in. And I have a real appreciation for the controller role and this chief accountability officer. I like that. I'm holding that with me.
Well, there were a lot of interesting things said, and I'm looking forward to.
Well, Coach Kim had to have a drink.
Already getting the party started.
Okay. Were you not entertained?
Hey, you know, this my nightcap time right now, so you know it's overtime.
Well, we also have a lot of fodder for our follow-ups because we will be inviting each of the candidates back for follow-ups during our Tuesday and Thursday noon hour before the primaries.
I'm anxious to hear more. I mean, at this point, we need folks that have a real plan. We got some great information, but we also need to know about next steps. And we do have 5 choices. So Coach Cam, as somebody who is a seasoned business owner and also someone who's big on accountability, what did you think of the evening?
So the first thing I'd say is it's a shame that Mr. Parker couldn't be a part, right? So obviously, whatever his emergency is, I hope he's well, hope he's okay. I'm sure he's going to look back over this and kick himself like, if I could have been there, I would have, right? So that's the first thing I say. You know, the second thing I say is most people know John Madden for the video game, right? But, you know, obviously he was a Hall of Fame tight end for the Raiders, you know, amazing coach. And he had this saying that I think really fits our forum. And he used to say, if you think you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. Right. And so until Brad spoke, I was like, yeah, you know, this person kind of makes sense. This person kind of makes sense. I think I've got 2 people that kind of make sense. You know, he checked a few of the boxes. I think Amani, you pointed out almost too well. Right. And so some of that is that threshold of being a seasoned experienced politician. Just in my research sitting, you know, on the forum, he has the most tenure as a politician over the other 3 people, of the 2 people that were on the panel. There's a threshold between being polished and being a Manchurian candidate, right? And so I think, you know, I think everyone represented well, but I think there was really that threshold of, you know what, you answered that question too precisely, right? So, you know, I think there is an advantage of going last, right? You're the last one in everyone's mind. The first thing I noticed was you gave him the opportunity to speak kind of a 30-second monologue. He kicked the opportunity to speak on a monologue, but then started on a monologue, right? So, you know, yeah.
You're like, how you answer the question with an opening statement? Is that what you mean?
Right. So do you want to open a statement? No, I'll pass. My opening statement is it's like I just asked you, right? So so first off, I definitely have to give both of y'all queens y'all's flowers. You guys did a bang up job for 2 hours. When you talk about stamina, like you guys were fully engaged for a full 2 hours. So definitely want to shout that out for sure.
Thank you so much. I think politics is our blood sport. I think you know, I think, you know, we both love to talk. We have laughs that will certainly make the forums, and I encourage people to go back, rewind, and listen to Kiana laugh and me laugh. We should probably have a laugh on. But ultimately we do this for the love.
Let's hold everybody accountable. Somebody said BR. It said bro, and Amani was like, she found like a flag. He was like waving a flag around, like her Brooklyn. Oh, my bad.
Oh, listen, I rep.
It don't take much. It don't take much.
But we really are about a 5-borough solution. I don't want anyone to think that Harlem lives don't matter to me, and other Manhattan lives and the Bronx lives where the people are. You know, the Bronx is now the realest borough. Okay, even Staten Island lives matter. And we all understand that mess. So yes, I do shout out Brooklyn. My family's been here for almost since freedom came. Like they literally got here in the 1800s.
With the Mayflower, yes. Do we have some other members who are backstage who can join us for this conversation? Maybe or maybe not. You know, tonight is a night of surprises. You know, we have to run because I'm interested. I know that there's been.
I know you have some feedback.
There it is.
Only in our forum could you hear the term Manchurian candidate. I salute you, sir.
Yeah.
And I recognize your gangster coach.
Look, I wanna kick it off. And if anybody else is backstage, please join us and whoever can come up. But for Brian to have the conversation about the RFPs and the solicitations, isn't that what I talk about when I talk about proactively helping to shape and develop RFPs? Because if we're pursuing them after they come out, they've already been shaped with a previous vendor with somebody else's business process. And I see we have Regina. Let's bring Regina.
She is the grand dame in this. Black entrepreneur.
If anybody is going to give us a rundown,
I must know what you think, Regina. How was how did everyone stack up?
No, everyone mute. It is Regina.
Let Coach Cam finish his thought first, and then we're gonna go to Regina. Let the brother finish his thought. But after that, Regina's gonna probably drop the mic on us. So we do.
What I wanted to say, Regina, was I appreciate your energy for setting the tone for the forum, right? So this is our second forum. We had our mayoral forum about a month ago, knocked that out of the park. But how you start is how you finish. And I appreciate just again, the good old Google machine, right? I appreciate your time served and the work you put in, for the landscape of Black entrepreneurs, especially women, especially Black women. So I appreciate you kicking us off right, for sure.
Well, thank you. I'm glad y'all invited me to participate. That was sweet.
We want to know your thoughts on the candidates and what we all heard this evening.
Okay, so the first candidate, I wasn't feeling her at all. She had a hard time just focusing on Black people. So that didn't sit well with me. Brian, I thought that he did a pretty good job, and I was thinking about the commercials that I've seen, which really don't highlight his background in finance. And so I was just, I learned something today because I haven't done that type of research. I know him as a developer. I know him as a senator, and I've seen some of the commercials. And I think the most recent one, he was talking about public safety and criminal justice. And I was like, wait, you're running for controller and whatnot. And I think that people need to know that he has those skills. So I thought that was interesting. And Brad, he's polished. He just had his whole thing together and he was real smooth with it. But, I think about how long he's been in the city council and the fact that, you've been there and you've been participating and you've had tremendous influence and you haven't been able to move the needle means to me that this issue wasn't as important. Yeah, so I think that the point that he brought up about affordable housing, that is very important. We need to have equity in that space. And we talked about that yesterday. So I like that. I like that very much. And I think that, it depends on where people's headsets are and what topics they feel most passionate about. And he is passionate about affordable housing. He is passionate about freelancers, so he's done, good work in that area. So, but I think that the person who winds up that we should support for this office should absolutely understand finance and be comfortable working with people involved in billions of dollars, as they said, billions of dollars in pension funds. And they were right. And we did, Diane did explain to us yesterday about the fact that these pension funds have to be persuaded to engage, Black professionals to manage their money, even though they have a demonstrated track record. And when Brian talked about fire in fire department and the police department, I thought that was interesting too. So, but we definitely need somebody who's going to be pushing that. And then the responses that the first woman made, Rashima, I think is that
Rashima, yeah.
Yeah, Rashima, and also Brand, in terms of how, doing a study and the order and all the rest of that, it's just like, okay, that's going to take a little while. I prefer somebody who's going to get in there and say, these are the Black folks I'm hiring because, you know, I need more quality, high quality professionals, and they need to be Black in this office. I would be more impressed with that type of response. So I just thought that was interesting. And Bragg didn't he said that he would work towards that, but he wants to do that, you know, strategic plan, and he's engaged these people. And I think the first people that he mentioned in terms of engaging, he mentioned a Latino, and he mentioned, I think, a white woman who's been involved in that space. And, you know, I really would like to see some really brilliant Black professionals to be a part of the team that he assembles to help him push this work. So he did get to it during his presentation when he spoke about working with Jamani Williams and this sister from, I forget which city that was, who is doing racial equity audits, you know, to determine how to make her office, you know, more equitable. So it was interesting, the different things that were shared, and I thought that y'all were spot on and asked. These were great questions that, you know, that y'all pulled together yesterday, and just, you know, making certain that they answer the questions about what are you going to do for Black folks. But Rashima, she had a problem with it. She really did have a problem with, you know, speaking directly to our needs.
So speaking to that, I'd like to open up for everybody who's willing to share your thoughts. So clearly, you know, once we get beyond what was just presented to us, we understand there's a strategy to a forum. There's a strategy to presenting your ideology and your plan. We saw 3 different strategies. So we saw Rashima, if I say her name correctly, I hope I did. So she went with the minimal, you know, acute answer, succinct. Brad was in the middle, very well practiced, verbose. Well, not overly verbose, but thorough, right? So he used data to pull emotions and pull triggers. And then we had brother preacher man, you know what I'm saying, Brian, who was about to pass that plate one more time on the collector for the building fund. You know, once you get beyond their presentation, I'm just saying, like, dude was going.
Listen,
so once you get beyond their presentation, what are your thoughts as far as the substance?
So, first of all, let me just say that I felt like everybody was a win and brought something to the table and gave people a takeaway, you know, just about things to think about with respect to the comptroller's office. Part of the challenge that we face is just, one, helping people understand why the comptroller is important, what they could do for us. And I think everyone, you know, whether it was in what they said or what they did not say, made it clear, you know, what the comptroller's role is and how they're going to function. I think everyone wants our votes, but to Regina's point about accountability, like, that is something that has been absent historically in the city when it comes to Black MWBEs and fairness. And, you know, folks like Regina have been on the front lines fighting every step of the way for everything that we've gotten. I am encouraged by a commitment, let me just say, I want to say something nice about everybody. Like, that's the kind of person that I was raised to be. And I appreciate
Reshma. So hold on a minute. So
don't ask me for my thoughts.
So this is not the 3rd grade Easter.
No, you didn't.
We'll say this is the 3rd grade Easter choir. You know what I'm saying? We gotta say something nice about everybody.
Okay. I will remember that when it's time to say something nice about Listen, we extended an invitation to literally everyone running for controller. And there are some people that demonstrated their appreciation or lack thereof for our community and our voting block by not even bothering to get back to us. And so the fact that she would come and she would address us, even if her answers were not as
pointed,
directed or pointed, thank you very much, as some of the other people. And maybe we have given her something to think about in terms of Black entrepreneurs and small business owners, and us being very clear about what the city needs to do to be truly equitable. Like, we're not okay with you just sort of presenting yourself as the most progressive city in the country and not actually doing something to address fairness and giving us an equal shot and our fair share of city contracts and resources. But two, I think that she does have some good ideas and a knowledge of the office, and that certainly gave me something to think about. I appreciated Senator Benjamin's understanding of the MWBE role, having been in it. Understanding how arduous that RFP process could be, and having some real thoughtfulness around what he would do, and what needs to be done to support us. And listen, I am not making a judgment about Councilmember Lander as a politician, but I do appreciate having dealt with so much mediocrity when it comes to some of those folks when they come to us. I appreciate the fact that he had data, and that in his messaging, he is presenting himself as someone who's willing to fight for real equity and fight for not only our votes, but our continued support. And what he does in reality remains to be seen.
Right.
Okay.
So,
so Amani, we're gonna put you in charge of the little children getting their Easter eggs on Easter, because you found something nice to say about everybody.
You are very kind of
brother Terrell,
actually,
talk to
fun
me
fact, not that great with kids except for my own. But
Imani's great. That's why she head up communication. She's great. But no, I think that is important what you mentioned, Imani. Like, we do appreciate everybody, coming here and speaking to us, and so that way we can give people a platform to speak to, Black businesses, because most times they don't, and speak very candid and frank. And I think just starting even with Reshma, a lot of people, she's probably, me, her, and Regina is probably the same complexion. So they don't realize, you're going to be treated the same way, not because of your skill set, but because of your skin color. And when people realize that, they can start really, when you're fighting for us, you're fighting for yourself. And I think overall, she did an okay job, and she did have some main points. I think Brian Benjamin, he is well versed. He understands the issues, especially in finance. I think Brian should have added more data, similar to what Lander did behind his point. And then Lander, he does have the experience, what it seemed like being on council, and he had the facts. But now it's a matter of really a lot of people come with the facts, but substance. Do you guys really have the political will to get things done? So I would want to see him and a Brian Benjamin work together, hand in glove, really, because I think they both bring two unique things in being able to get things done. And one of the issues that I have, especially with the $250 billion pension budget, I know finance. I know a ton of Black investment managers, consultants, etc. And we talk on a day-to-day basis. And that's the biggest budget, and we already are taxpayers. That should be, prioritized, like ASAP, and getting those things done. And then to the comptroller, they should not be spending, it should be MWBE spend 15%, or that $3 billion, right? It should be 15%. It should be a percentage of the 30% of the $22 billion. So that's one thing. Even a comptroller, they need to be held more accountable themselves within doing that. And I think that's part of our job as a community. And that may be some things in terms of shaping policy to do so. But it's way too much money. $250 billion can change things tomorrow. Very unacceptable. Yes, so we as a community need to hold these people accountable and really get detailed about that budget, because just that alone can be transformative. And that's really, I think, the main response, or one of the main things, what I will be looking for in terms of those big numbers, because you have these, and if you've been seeing the stats, like a lot of Black asset managers, they have been performing higher, and all of them are not emerging managers, they emerged. So everything's kind of an emerging thing in which they want to categorize. So I think they need to treat them as they would the Blackstones or Goldman Sachs, because oftentimes they have higher performance. Like Robert Smith, who we know has probably the best track record over the last 10, 20 years of any private equity manager globally, he's still considered an emerging manager, which is ridiculous.
Yes,
that is.
And we need to change.
That's right. That's fact.
You know, as like a new member to you know, this group, like the Black Government Contracting Club, one, I'd like to thank each and every one of you guys, Amani for your leadership, Kiana for your leadership, Coach Cam, this is my probably like the second time I've seen your face, and Terrell, thank you for your leadership. But I really came back on for what Regina stated was very spot on. And I think to sum up, yes, Reshma as a candidate, I was kind of concerned. And yeah, I did put a little, you know, feet to the fire situation because there wasn't necessarily a focus plan on what would be done for Black businesses specifically. And I think when I look at Brad, is he the image that of, you know, category that I want? Yes, he knows his numbers. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't, you know, and one thing he did that was very savvy, he tailored the numbers towards Black businesses. He didn't make it very much broad. He actually honed in specifically on spending. He honed in on a very key thing that, hey, Passport NYC, the software that we all use to get contracts, the comptroller is not on that software, and that is a large issue. So I think he knows the business, but it's going to be a situation of put his feet to the fire and make sure that he executes if in case he does get that seat.
Yeah.
Well, Kristen, thank you for weighing in. I just want to, my family would kill me if I didn't tell you it's Imani.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I'm so
no, isn't that
Imani?
No, you raised some really good points. I just want to say though, he did what everyone is supposed to do, which is when you know what the topic is about, you come prepared.
Yeah.
Don't come give us broad answers that don't really answer our questions.
Yep.
Right. Absolutely. Well, before we close out, I'm going to say that we will and would like to.
Kiana?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, Kiana, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say we would like to invite all of the controller candidates, whether you joined us this evening or did not. We will be doing follow-ups with all of the candidates, one-on-one follow-ups with small groups of our members and our leadership team here at the BGCC in the following Tuesdays and Thursdays before the primary. Same thing for the mayoral candidates who we haven't gotten a chance to do our follow-ups with yet, but we will get to you before the primary, rest assured. So if you're not hearing me on the broadcast this evening, one of our team members will reach out to you. I do want to do a plug for the merch shop, which is up on the website. If you go to blackcontracts.org, you can support the BGCC in style. Do we have any other upcoming events or activities that we want to share before we close it out? Any final thoughts? Any last words?
I do want to take. Go ahead, Monica. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll throw this one last question to everyone. Oh, go ahead.
What's the question?
Coach Kim went on mute.
What's the question?
Well, I got that rule: queens over kings. Yeah, so I want to give Amani a space to say whatever she has to say.
Oh, got you.
Oh no, I was waiting for you. I am going to thank everyone for coming. It was an incredible evening and issue the world famous Black-a-days that you don't have to go home, but it might be time for you to get out of here. So if you have a couple things that you want to say, please feel free to say them, Coach Ann.
Yeah, so the only thing I was going to in closing is as I took, pretty scrupulous notes. Is it Peshma? I feel like I'm saying the lady's name right every time.
Reshma.
Yeah, Sister Patel. Okay. We all get that. So the only thing I say is, hearing her speak did take me back to Hillary in 2016, right? And there is so much pressure on women in politics to get everything right. I don't, as I'm governing myself, reviewing what the last 2 hours have been, I do want to give a little bit of grace and mercy for the lack of buoyancy that women get in politics to get it right. And so, you know, I mean, I think we have some amazing candidates. I appreciate all of them for coming out. And so that was kind of my closing thought was, you know, I feel like it is easy to be super critical when you're blazing a path or a trail.
Well, I just want to say that the stakes are extremely high.
Yeah, and
We need to create some generational wealth, and we don't have time for people to get it together. We need people who are going to get in there and handle it.
And and to Black women's point, we never fumble the ball. Whenever we're put into place, and I think Imani can prove that time and time again. Kiana can prove that time and time again. When it is time for us to be put in a place where we essentially have to excel, we don't just deliver, we excel. And so we have high expectations because there is a lot on the line, and we have, like, they just need to meet that. There is no sugarcoating anymore, or you know, providing Easter eggs. Ain't none of that anymore, right? It is time. There have been trailblazers already, and I think Regina Smith stands as a trailblazer. The platform is set, so deliver.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, the standard is the standard. Like, if you're going to be over $250 billion, no matter who you are, I think all of the candidates, even more of them, you need to become prepared. But that should be the standard, meaning what Brad did and him doing his research. But that's the basic stuff. That really should be the basic, and they need to go above beyond that. And I think, you know, us as leaders have people count. Just because certain people haven't been used to that, that doesn't mean the role of the position. And anything less is just unacceptable. And you shouldn't be running for a comptroller without having your facts straight, because you'll get on these platforms and get the exposure that you need, more importantly, and get exposed.
I just want to take an opportunity and thank you, Terrell, for your words, and everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you to the candidates who came through to explain to us what their visions were, to define the controller role and how they are going to take it into the next decade and help with the city's recovery and resiliency efforts. Thank you to all of the amazing people from our club who came out today. Our crew gets mad love. We roll deep. We really care. We're here. Thank you so much, Regina, for being amazing, for not taking no mess, as my grandmother would say, and being candid, and for your heartfelt words and support. And thank you to everyone watching. I urge you to find out more about Black contracts, the Black Government Contracting Club. Go to blackcontracts.org to check out our website and get more information and that merch. And I hope that you will join us again when we come with our next presentation, because there will definitely be a next presentation. The work continues. Take care, everyone, and have a great evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.